The Mega Man X and Mega Man Zero series were very interesting and compelling works in the video gaming industry if considered from a psychological and moral perspective. Many deep and meaningful themes were imbued under the general body of the games, contained in the particular characterization and portrayed personas of its characters, revealed in the scripts and the character dialogue, and in the musical cues and the general stylization of the events which the characters reacted to and engaged with. One very interesting character to consider from the perspective of a Fall to Darkness character archetype is found in Elpizo in Mega Man Zero 2. When the series commences, Elpizo is an unknown character and a new face to the player, and we are surprised to find him having entered a high position of command and authority within the Resistance during Zero's absence. From the very beginning of the introduction of Elpizo, we see that a story element was employed to create a sense of a contrast between Elpizo and Zero, in order to create a sort of sense of insecurity on the part of Elpizo, a sense of insecurity that would generally grow into a type of inferiority complex as the game progresses. This warping of Elpizo's mind begins very early, in the moment that Zero is found unconscious by the Resistance. When the story dialogue sequence begins, Elpizo is officially being hailed in as the commander of the Resistance, and all the eyes and the focus are on him. Elpizo is special or unique in the eyes of CL, the original founder of the Resistance. Yet, as soon as Zero is found and his damaged condition is concerned, CL quickly runs to see him along with the members of the Resistance who had encountered Zero in the events of the first game. Elpizo is confronted very early on with a reality where, after having experienced being the eye of the hurricane for a short while, much attention would immediately shift to Zero, who was functionally his senior, since Zero had aided the Resistance and saved it from the brink of destruction, rescued countless Resistance soldiers, and had gone on to defeat the rogue copy of X in the previous game, all before Elpizo himself had even joined or aided the Resistance in any way. At first, Elpizo greets Zero kindly and asks him to support the Resistance in destroying Neo Arcadia, hinting that Elpizo had made the destruction of Neo Arcadia a personal goal by which to prove his worth to the Resistance, seeing that the original purpose of forming the Resistance was cited by CL as self-defense, and that the goal of the Resistance was to successfully discover an alternative energy source so that the Neo-Arcadians would no longer feel a need to terminate Reploids arbitrarily to conserve energy. Zero criticizes Elpizo's simplified worldview, saying, "Destroy Neo-Arcadia, huh? It's not that easy." Zero does not offer to help Elpizo outright, and wishes to reserve himself for more independent decisions. Elpizo already starts to become insecure in his presence, calling Zero Mr. Legend playfully, hinting that he felt personally hurt by the criticism of his goal and by the momentary rejection. Even still, Elpizo retains the loyalty and enthusiasm of a regiment of newer Resistance soldiers, those less familiar with Zero, those whom Elpizo spent more time with, which bolsters his confidence and self-image somewhat. In their second exchange of dialogue, Zero again criticizes the thinking and methodology of Elpizo, but Elpizo, desirous to prove himself competent, mostly ignores Zero, but still explains that though they won't change the mode of operations to suit Zero's opinion, any help by the part of Zero would be appreciated. You can tell from the discussion that Zero is annoyed, but he opts to hold his silence, perceiving that any discussion with Elpizo over tactics is futile. Left with a position where Elpizo's men would take on dangerous tasks with or without his help, and being concerned for their lives and safety in the missions, Zero agrees to help. From that point forward, we can see that interactions between Elpizo and Zero become awkward. Elpizo's element of self-doubt and his hints of insecurity in the presence of Zero come out in the form of occasional stuttering and moments, but he is able to maintain confidence overall. Once Zero clears the outstanding 4 missions, Elpizo becomes more appreciative to him, even perhaps somewhat kinder. Yet even still, he moves forward with his reckless plan to attack Neo Arcadia, which he designated Operation Righteous Strike. He reveals that he does not believe that Neo Arcadia would show mercy even if they developed an alternative energy source and handed it over. Finally, he initiates the attack signal and transports to Neo Arcadia to command the troops with an absolute confidence that they will be victorious. Zero is urged by those who remain to follow Elpizo, since they are very worried and concerned for the well-being of him and the soldiers. Zero agrees and transports to Neo Arcadia as well, chasing after Elpizo. However, shortly after arriving, Zero begins to find out that the area has been littered with the bodies of the resistance soldiers who had just attacked. At last he reaches the deeper part of Neo Arcadia, where Elpizo lies unconscious, having been utterly defeated, and having the 3 remaining guardians standing over him victoriously, each of them expressing their disappointment, boredom, and frustration with Elpizo's attack, calling the soldiers weak and calling Elpizo an inferior ex-Neo Arcadia citizen. Now, of course, remember that Phantom of the 4 Guardians had previously self-destructed in the first game and thus was not present in this one. Even Harpuya seems to understand well that Zero had nothing to do with this ill-advised attack and that Elpizo, who had led it, had endangered the lives of the resistance. He comments that even if Zero rescues Elpizo, he would probably not thank Zero for it, and that Zero might have it better off if Elpizo dies. After this, Harpuya announces that an aircraft with a special bomb was dispatched to attack the resistance base, and that Neo Arcadia could not simply forgive this act of rebellion. Zero is transported out with Elpizo back to the base, and Zero immediately heads out to deal with the attacking aircraft. After dealing with the aircraft's bomb and defeating Kuagast Ankus, Zero returns to the base. It is from this point forward that the decline of Elpizo's mental state begins to increase dramatically. We find that Elpizo was heartbroken after the loss and lost all of his self-confidence, leaving behind a recording where he loathes himself for his lack of power and openly reveals that he wants to be a hero. It is from this wrong motive of wanting to be the hero and wanting all the acknowledgement and attention on himself that Elpizo's corruption progresses. Zero begins chasing Elpizo and finds him with a different tone and frame of mind, symbolized most strongly by the use of the soundtrack piece Combustion. Return to the base. What can you do by yourself? Zero asks. Actually, I can do anything and everything if I obtain a certain thing. I learned about something that makes you invincible once you obtain it, thanks to these baby elves, replies Elpizo. You mean the Dark Elf? Yes. I once thought it was something from mythology, but I was wrong. I have come to believe in it. The key to unlock the seal of the Dark Elf is somewhere around here. Let's see who will find it first. Elpizo progressively takes on a more chaotic tone as the story continues, but even now you catch the early beginnings of a psychotic mind frame developing in Elpizo. Bit by bit, he is built up as a more menacing and intimidating figure. First, he successfully steals the key to unseal the Dark Elf. Gahaha! Now all I have to do is break the seal of the Dark Elf. Then I will be as strong as you, Zero. Or should I say, stronger than you. Elpizo's words betray the fact that he had adopted an unhealthy habit of comparing himself with Zero, and coveted the prestige which Zero yielded. Zero chases Elpizo from one location to another after this, but Elpizo always seems to be one step ahead. At first, the three guardians speak of Elpizo with confusion, uncertainty regarding his actions and intent, or their general meaning, but still they opt to ignore him overall as a minor nuisance, focusing on Zero instead. However, as Elpizo grows in power from the aid of the Dark Elf, not even Harpuya is able to defeat him. He is even able to use his newly acquired power to take control of Harpuya, forcing him to fight Zero against his own will. Elpizo even revives some of the previous enemies that Zero fought already, and places them under his control using the same powers which he manipulated Harpuya with, and he leaves them to hold back Zero's advance while he himself penetrates further into the deepest chambers of Neo Arcadia, where the physical body of the old hero, the original X of the previous games, remains, having been used to seal back the Dark Elf from its full measure of power. Zero is just barely able to catch up with Elpizo right before he can touch the body of X, but he seals back Zero with an energy net and forces him to watch as Elpizo destroys the original body of his old friend and fellow Maverick Hunter. For the players of the franchise, this was an emotionally charged event because it symbolized the reality that the old protagonist of the previous series truly would be unable to return and would be put to rest in the storyline. Likewise, you can see both the despair and anger of the loss of his old friend's body on the face of Zero. Bear in mind that X and Zero had effectively fought together as brothers through numerous conflicts in the Maverick Wars through the events of the previous games, and also during the events of the Elf Wars. Numerous times, Zero had his body taken over by the Maverick virus or by Sigma, and was only broken free by the efforts of X. Also, X had been rescued numerous times by Zero in various situations. The two were closest friends, and X was the closest thing Zero had to a family member. Now, having been strengthened by the unleashed power of the Dark Elf, even further, Elpizo's form is warped to something more vicious and demonic-looking, and his mind frame descends to an even worse state, a more pure form of evil. Now he mentions that his goal is not only destroying Neo Arcadia in the sense of its military power and rule, but to exterminate all human beings as well. After being defeated in this form, Elpizo gives over what little is left of himself to the overwhelming power of the Dark Elf, and is transformed into a monster. The final descent of his mind is symbolized by a blood-curdling scream which he utters as the power of the Dark Elf tears at his body and his mind. The only words he is left able to utter is, "More power." At this point, Elpizo has mostly lost consciousness and his warped body is moved by mere destructive and killer instinct. Finally, Zero defeats him, at last freeing Elpizo's soul from the tortured state of mind, but because of the damage sustained to his body, it is shutting down and he is dying. The music is sad, symbolizing the tragedy and sorrow of Elpizo's choices and the manner of his passing, and the loss of his potential as a character. However, out of pity and mercy, the Dark Elf saves Elpizo's data by converting him into a Cyber Elf. Yet regardless, Elpizo is no longer able to retain existence in the physical world, and instead of becoming a hero like he had wished, he became a momentary villain, the exact opposite of his dream. Thus, as a character, Elpizo symbolizes the tragedy of a person who has lost the ability to value themselves in the midst of their confrontation with their own weakness. A needy person who, feeling so deprived of attention and acknowledgement, was seduced by promises of power and acknowledgement and the promises of an easy path to power, only to lose everything in its pursuit, and to be left only with sorrow and regret. Personally, I feel great empathy and sorrow for Elpizo and people like him and all character portrayals like this. What do you think? Please let me know in the comment section below. Also, if you enjoyed this video, please consider donating to me to help me free up more time in order to produce more like it. You can donate to me by clicking the link shared in the description. And as always, have a great night and I will see you next time.